If you'd like an overview of how to get your organization a facility security clearance, you're in the right place. In this video, I'll explain the concepts and the steps involved in getting a facility security clearance. My name's Mike Bush. I'm the president and principal consultant of Secure Defense Consulting. And since my company's founding in 2008, I've been advising and helping clients with obtaining and maintaining facility security clearances. A facility security clearance issued by the United States government authorizes your organization to work on contracts that involve your accessing classified national security information. The National Industrial Security Program Operating Manual, or NISPOM for short, is the United States government's manual that sets the requirements for facility security clearances and how to maintain a facility security clearance. And in the latest version of the NISPOM manual, the United States government also identified or named a facility security clearance as an entity eligibility determination. So you may also come across that phrasing of entity eligibility determination, which is essentially the same thing as what has been referred to as a facility security clearance for many years. First, let's cover some requirements that you need to meet in order to even get the process started to obtain a facility security clearance. Your organization must all have a legitimate need to access classified national security information. So you cannot just apply for a facility security clearance on your own. You actually need a customer to sponsor your organization for a facility security clearance. And that sponsor could either be a United States government entity, whether it be in the military or the civilian portion of the government, or it could be a contractor to the United States government that already has a facility security clearance and is going to subcontract some work to you that would necessitate your accessing classified national security information. So any of that range of entities could potentially sponsor your organization for facility security clearance. In a common scenario, you might bid on a contract that requires your organization to have a facility security clearance. And then once the customer awards the contract to you, then the customer sponsors your organization for the facility security clearance, and the United States government processes your organization for that facility clearance that you will need in order to perform on that contract. But before a customer can even sponsor your organization for a facility security clearance, you'll need to provide them with some information about your company, including your company's CAGE code. That stands for Commercial and Government Entity, and it's commonly known as a CAGE code for short. You can obtain one of those online for free, so that's a good first step to take. It costs nothing, so you might as well get that done up front. Now, an important element of obtaining a facility security clearance is that your organization's key management personnel must obtain personnel security clearances at the level of the prospective facility security clearance for your organization. So if your key management personnel, or KMP, as it's commonly referred to for short, if your KMP do not already have personnel security clearances at that level, then once your organization is sponsored for a facility security clearance, then the government will identify who your key management personnel are, and they will process those necessary personnel for security clearances as part of the facility security clearance process. And as for the key management personnel that are generally required to have or obtain personnel security clearances in order for the organization to get a facility security clearance, those include the company's facility security officer, which must be an employee of your organization. They can also hold other roles. They can be full-time or part-time, but they do need to be a United States citizen who is eligible for a personnel security clearance, and that facility security officer would then manage your company's facility clearance and ensure that you're compliant with the NISPOM. Then there's also what's referred to as the Insider Threat Program Senior Official, or ITPSO for short, and that can be the same person who holds the role of FSO, or it can be a different employee of your organization. And then there's the CEO, or the president of your organization. They are required to have a security clearance in order for the company to obtain a facility security clearance. The chairperson of the board of directors would also be required to get a security clearance, as well as the majority owner of your corporation. They would be required to get a security clearance as well. And getting your organization's key management personnel security clearances is typically the step in the facility security clearance process that delays the issuance of the facility security clearance, because it can take time to obtain personnel security clearances for your key management personnel. So this is a really key part or key step to pay attention to, because you want to determine who should hold those key management personnel positions, and you need to determine what are their chances of obtaining personnel security clearances, how long might it take for each individual key management person to obtain a personnel security clearance. Those are all important considerations. I can help you if you contact my company. I can help you determine which key management personnel need to obtain security clearances, and perhaps how you might shift around the roles or titles so that the key management personnel with the best chances of obtaining personnel security clearances are put in the right roles. And that way your organization's chances of obtaining a facility security clearance, as well as obtaining it swiftly, are optimized. For information on my company's consulting services, you can check out the links on this video or the information in the expandable description box underneath this video. Once your organization is sponsored for a facility security clearance, the United States government will reach out to your facility security officer, typically by email, and inform them that your organization has been sponsored, and it will set typically very tight deadlines for you to complete certain steps in the facility security clearance process. And if you don't complete those steps on time, the United States government terminates the facility clearance process. So with that in mind, it's wise to do certain things in advance of being sponsored for a facility security clearance. You'd want to gather certain information and documentation about your company, including such things as a business license, if that exists, a fictitious name certificate, if that exists, articles of incorporation from your state, if you run a corporation, a partnership agreement, if you run a partnership, a joint venture agreement, if you're running a joint venture. If you're running a college or university, then you would want the college's charter. And if you're running a public corporation, you would need the latest SEC filings. And if you're running any sort of corporation, you would need the stock ledger. You would also need to gather any bylaws or the latest board of directors or other meeting minutes of your company. And you'd want to create a simple chart showing the legal organization of your company. And you'd also want to document any recent changes in your company's structure. And for any of your key management personnel who will need to be processed for security clearances, you'd want to gather their documentation of their United States citizenship, such as a certified United States birth certificate or a United States passport. And then finally, it can be helpful for you to fill out a federal form called the SF-328 form, or Standard Form 328, which is titled the Certificate Pertaining to Foreign Interests. It's essentially just a checklist, but that is a helpful form for you to fill out in advance, and so that you can log into the government's secure website and upload your company's documentation when it's time for you to do so. It can be wise in advance of that to get a digital certificate from a government-approved provider so that you can log into that secure website. You don't want to leave that to the last minute, because it does take time to obtain those sorts of digital certificates. And if you want my help with that, you can contact me via my company. Now, one common challenge or obstacle that can arise during the facility security clearance process is if the documentation or publicly available information about your organization is contradictory or incomplete. I recall one instance years ago with a client of mine who had provided his company's documentation for me to review it before he submitted it to the government. And I noticed that one of the documents about his company just seemed to be some generic document. I don't know where he got it, but it didn't even have his company's name in it. And that certainly would not have been acceptable to the government. But these are the sorts of discrepancies that can easily go unnoticed in an organization when you're working in the midst of the organization. So it can be helpful to have more than one person check for discrepancies or omissions, or you're welcome to have me help you with that. Now, one question that I commonly get from clients is, how long does it take to obtain a facility security clearance? So as a general rule of thumb, I'd say from the point in time that your organization is sponsored for facility security clearance to the point in time that the government makes the decision whether to grant or deny the facility security clearance, it's typically a matter of months. You can't really go through that whole process where you need to complete certain steps and the government needs to complete certain steps. You can't really realistically expect to complete that whole process in just a couple of weeks. It typically takes at least a month and may even take several months, depending on various factors involved. And another question that I frequently get from clients is, how much does it cost to get a facility security clearance? And years ago, I had even seen another consultant state online on their website that, oh, the federal government charges you several $1,000s to grant you a facility security clearance, but that has not been true. It is not true. The federal government does not charge you either to process your organization for facility security clearance or to issue you the facility security clearance. So there are no direct charges or costs in that regard. However, there are indirect costs that, of course, you may want to be aware of, such as the time or labor that you need to put into obtaining the facility security clearance, as well as the steps you need to continuously take to comply with the NISPOM and maintain your facility security clearance. I hope this has been informative and insightful for you. And if you'd like further information or guidance from me, you can reach out to me via my company, Secure Defense Consulting. And my website is securedefenseconsulting.com. And in the meantime, I wish you the best with your business endeavors.